from the Adams family, and saying, well, if we're going to have if the vaccine passports need photographs, the hairdressers will have to be the first to open. So it just gives a lighter touch to it anyway.
How are you coping on the hair front? I mean, are you home grooming?
I just run my fingers through it, and when it gets really, when my daughter says it goes Beethoven-y, I just put some Brill cream in it.
Beethoven-y, I like that.
What about yourself?
Well, I went up the road for €5.
Oh, so they are open, yeah.
They are, yeah. Yeah, it was all masked, but.
Well, we've had the masks and shields and everything, and the when they are open here, they've had all the kind of COVID friendly measures, and you outside, and so yeah, that's all been in place for about a year now.
I just want to go to first the Irish World.
Okay.
Sorry, Bernard. Hello. I'm John, and welcome to Tomorrow Tonight. I'm John McBroadsheet. We're joined, honoured to have Bernard Purcell, who's in London and is the editor of the Irish World. Good evening, Bernard.
Good evening. For anyone who might have heard at the beginning, we were just exchanging tonsorial tips.
Yes. Talking about the barn. Okay, we're going to go to the Irish World. Bernard, which is on the streets today and tomorrow.
Yes, and as people can see, it's the roadmap that Boris Johnson outlined. But from the point of view of people here who are Irish who might want to go back, while they can get to Ireland subject to certain restrictions, a lot of people are thinking of their summer holidays, are going to see family whom they haven't seen for over a year now, and it looks like May is the time. From May they might be able to do that. June 21st, midsummer, tallying very much with what Micheál Martin said at the weekend as well, when he kept, even though 24th of June is actual midsummer, but it's the expectation management. One of the things though is as you'll see, there's key dates on there. Johnson has been at pains to say that he'll be driven by, which is welcome to hear, that he'll be driven by data, not dates, and then promptly goes to mention 3 very specific dates. It's like Tony Blair was at the Good Friday Agreement talks. He said that this is no time for sound bites, but I do feel the hand of history on my shoulder. So politicians just can't resist it. So, but it's trying to have one can understand and one has sympathy, trying to bring the different sides with him and give people, as I said, managed expectations. The key difference in this, which is out of character for Johnson, is that he does appear to have listened to the scientific advice, to the chagrin of some of the kind of wilder members of his party, but he's managed to bring most people with him. There's a 5-week gap between the key dates so that they can monitor the incidence of infection. Even though it should be remembered that infection rates are still high, and the hospital admissions are as high as they were, or nearly as high as they were at the peak last year. And even if we have a low rate of infection and deaths between now and say something like 21st of June, that's 30,000 more people who can be expected to lose their lives between now and then.
You know, the dates, he says they're irreversible, but if he's going by the data, surely it's...
Of course, they're not irreversible. If he's going by the data, you're quite right. But a lot of it is, as I said, just making the right noises while trying to make some progress, give some people hope. Quite clearly, as was made clear by Professor Whitty and other scientific advisors, if it's going a certain way, the one thing that people cannot really avoid is the mistakes made at Christmas, which saw a huge surge and a huge death toll after that. What we have seen is that the lockdown is working. It is, the infections and the deaths are going in the right direction. And as Professor Whitty said at the beginning of this week, that's not because of vaccinations. We will see the vaccinations effect kick in because it's known now to be very good at just mild infections, asymptomatic infections, and serious infections. But that is only now beginning to actually sort of reach it. I think the term is critical mass, but he said the overwhelming impact on the disease to date has been that people have been following the rules and staying at home.
Yeah. Your virtual St. Patrick's Day, this is the second virtual St. Patrick's Day.
Indeed it is, yes. And there's a bit of a nod to Marvel, what is it now? Disney Plus's One Division there, just trying to take the image of the pixelated revelers and the kind of dissolve between the, that's one of our designers.
Yeah, you're a great designer there, Bernard.
We have a good dedicated team that they're certainly not in it to get rich, and they all have very good strengths, and they're lovely people to work with.
And what is the virtual St. Patrick's Day? Do they?
It's concerts. It's I mean, for instance, London Irish is going to have 10. The rugby club is going to have 10 days of everything, like a race night with on the evening of Cheltenham Gold Cup for the like we had last week's front page. I think with Father Murphy's, they're going to have their virtual 10K. There will be concerts. There will be recitals. A lot of it Zoom based. The places like the Irish Cultural Centre in Hammersmith or the London Irish Centre in Camden, or Luton Irish Forum. Lots of it'll give them a chance to at least keep some kind of bond between the various organisations. And to be honest, it'll probably be a great deal more welcome than the usual farrago that happens in Trafalgar Square.
You're not a fan of?
Well, yeah, I will make a confession that for many years, when St. Patrick's Day came, Seamus Mallon and myself would look for a Chinese restaurant or an Indian restaurant where that was definitely had nothing, no green beer. But it's what's happened, I think, now with the kind of creation of things like St. Bridget's Day and that, and with the emphasis on, say, the artistic and the cultural, it's taken it away from the kind of Bacchanalian fest that Guinness and others used to identify themselves with, and it's so perhaps we will see St. Patrick, which is a day which is a good branding opportunity for Ireland, but yes, most Irish people, and certainly Irish people overseas, can tend to be a bit alienated by it.
The Irish Examiner, Bernard, Taoiseach under fire for vague COVID strategy.
Again, it's what we were talking about, the dates. You'll be criticised for being too prescriptive, and you'll be criticised for being too vague as well. I think he's done his best as much as he can to manage expectations with the various interviews he's given on TG Cahir. He has been pretty upfront. He said that told people to expect that the level 5 restrictions would stay, people will come back to school, and that it'll be midsummer until anything like normality is resumed, but with some kind of encouragement given to the hospitality industry and tourism industry to expect maybe normal business or something that, excuse me, passes for a return to normal in the summer.
Yeah, and Varadkar, I suppose, is playing to the gallery while Martin has sort of been more. It's a fantastic picture, by the way. There, do you see that?
It is, yes, I can see it. Well, Leo Varadkar, he is a showman. You can find fault with him on a great many things, but he does have flash and he does have pizzazz. He may not have been able to lead his party to a victory, and Micheál Martin, who doesn't always have the undying affection of the rest of his party, tends to be more sober, serious, and responsible, or at least gives that image. So
even more so as he's become Taoiseach, he seems to really sort of almost shrunk into the role. Sorry, Bernard.
Oh no, please, you continue, John. By all means.
No, I just wanted to. The mother and baby home survivor accounts retrieved. It's quite an interesting story.
Having been told that the hard drives with the sound files have been wiped, and anybody who has a modicum, oh yeah, right. So it really, the poor minister responsible is just being. It's somewhat hapless for him in that.
Yeah,
you discussed this.
Yeah, we have,
and with Derek Mooney and others. It's difficult. It's difficult to. The whole I'm stumbling over my words here, but if
No?
anyone looks at the kind of departmental approaches to the survivors over the years, even back to the schemes 20 years ago, there's been a high-handedness, there's been an arrogance, they are secondary to the process. We said that in a discussion here a couple of months ago, and this would seem to be even more of that.
Yeah, and well, at least they found them anyway, which is be grateful for some small mercies. Tiger Woods in surgery after crash today.
That dominates all the front pages over here as well. I think they had to use the jaws of life on him to get him out, but it's a very striking picture. Yes,
extraordinary. I mean, he's lucky to be alive. I mean, he's critical. Is that right, Bernard?
I gather that from the front pages that I've read that yes, but. I would imagine he's probably physically very fit and a good candidate to survive as well. If he's, but beyond that, I don't know anything more than what's on the front pages.
And in answer to the vague Michel Martin, we have him being specific,
which is good to see. I mean, we were talking about flashiness versus kind of staid, dull, and Keir Starmer's getting a fair bit of grief over here at the moment for being sound and responsible as well. But as somebody who's a great, I think I've said to you before, I was a big fan of Attlee. I'll take dull competence over flashiness every day.
Yeah, I would have said that before Major came along.
I thought actually Major history will be a lot kinder to Major. I've always maintained this for a very long time. I mean, if you look at, he worked with virtually no majority whatsoever in the government at the time.
Yeah, crazy.
He managed to bring various sides on board. He was public-minded, although there were one or two policies too far, like privatization of the railways. He kept the peace process going. He kept the back channels going, while depending on the unionists for their vote, and without actually being accused of betrayal in the same way that, say, we saw in latter years.
He had a good relationship with Reynolds, I think.
Yes, they both worked on that from when they were finance ministers, and
but they remained friends. I think I gathered after.
Oh, very much so. He showed tremendous kindness when Albert was failing, and showed kindness to his widow as well. And they didn't start out as friends. That friendship developed over the years, and but a substantial figure who I think history will be kinder to. And that there are more and more people coming around to that view, but I've been an outlier for some time.
Yeah. I think I was in London in the early 90s, living there during that, and I went from the Thatcher into Major, and it was a grim time. He was trying to get back to values. I remember he said,
that was basics. Yes, back to basics, I think, and then
every member of his party, I think, or the cabinet seemed to come a cropper then.
On small things as well, compared to the billions that you see today, and it was just walking into it. But there was
an Eller, and there was a kind of a hangover from Thatcher, but not really, and very EU friendly, but still trying to fight off their regard. Anyway, it was
But 2 years later, he went and contested an election, which everybody expected him to lose, and he won it. And he was in number 10 for 7 years.
Yeah, I know. It was amazing, but he did ensure that Labour would be in power for the next 18 years.
I don't think he did. But I mean, you're talking about by the time that Tories went in 79, and so I think people had been ready possibly for a change by 92, but you'd had Black Wednesday, you'd had interest rates soaring through the roof.
By 97, it was just like, good Lord, these people are crazy, just get
Well, so from '94, from when John Smith died, and John Smith had actually
Yeah.
been, people had many high hopes for him, but there was a bravura quality, which is and an open goal, it must be said, from the time Blair and Brown went in there, and they carried themselves as if to say, make way, stand aside. We want competent people. Their narrative was one of competence all the time, and that's something that is one doesn't see to the same extent, that same bravura quality at the moment. I mean, there are a great many other factors, but you don't have this presumption that this is the Dauphin or this is the person who will be, whereas Brown and
Yeah, they were so obviously
were courted by the city, they were courted by everyone, and so they had that period from '94 to '97. So,
yeah, and then it was kind of Mandelson's choice, really, wasn't it? I mean, whoever he picked apparently he was the kingmaker in that sense, you know.
That's overstated to a large extent. Certainly, there was a great deal of Blair.
I think he chose right, though, in terms of electoral value, you know, Blair over Brown.
Certainly, Blair probably had more marquee appeal to voters, as he won 3 elections, and to say people would have liked to have seen more ambitious policies in that time. The psychodrama, as it was called, between Brown and Blair was pretty heartbreaking because both had tremendous talents, but then they ended up with factions on either side of the party, and they were more preoccupied with that a lot of the time, and with that kind of bear baiting going on in the press, and the various titles by proxy, and you had political editors who were appointed on whether or not they were close to Blair or to Brown. And so that just kept going, and even though they were in power for quite a long time, and they did accomplish some good public benefits and public goods, I think, and obviously some cock-ups as well.
Yeah, and undone by Iraq, I think, in a big way. Blair certainly.
Yes.
You know, we could just call for jobs at home to stop COVID becoming a disease of the poor. This would be, you know, deliver.
Well, that 2-tier approach is being discussed at the moment now as well, because the big one of the things that is being pushed is the whole idea of the vaccination passport, and the people being free to travel if they have a vaccination passport. Now there's a certain reticence to embrace that among some of the ranks in the government, because they don't want to be accused of being unfair. They can see the logic for it internationally, because you get jabs for yellow fever and everything else, so depending on where you're traveling. But domestically, they've been talking about adapting one of the apps, not the track and trace one, but one of the vaccination, one of the NHS apps that already, see if that can be done without running afoul of privacy issues and the like, in the way that the track and trace one might. You just use an app on the telephone. It's Michael Gove has been appointed. There's some kind of shenanigans going on in Downing Street over who's close to the throne and who has Johnson's ear and so forth. But he's been given the brief of making that work, and people, I mean, might embrace it if it means that they can go to concerts, that they can go to football, or they can go to restaurants and so forth. But it's coming up with a way that is not seen to be them and us, that you have the certain people who, by dint of the socioeconomic status of that, find themselves excluded.
Right, yeah. Well, this is it, and this will be perhaps the debate of the year, won't it? I mean,
well, there's 2 main factions in cabinet at the moment. There's the kind of red of tooth and claw monetarist side, as seen, which is Rishi Sunak, the son-in-law of a billionaire who worked for, I think, one of the big merchant banks and has a personal fortune estimated to run into a couple of $100 million, who had been very keen on the Eat Out to Help Out in the face of no supporting scientific evidence last year, and but he's been courting popularity by being seen to give various financial handouts, borrowing to do that. But we're now at a stage where, if these deadlines are actually adhered to, you'll see the end of the furlough, you'll see the end of any kind of financial packages to help businesses that are actually pretty badly hurt. The idea of extending the stamp duty holiday is one that it's quite. It would benefit. I think what we've seen is that prices go up in some cases rather than it being the incentive that it's a bit like, I suppose, when you increase asset prices by the quantitative easing. It's questionable what benefit there would be for wider society on this, especially when I think 500,000 people, predominantly younger people, have lost their jobs and are facing unemployment. And I'm not trying to be the counsel of doom, but there is such a thing as, economic gravity. The rules of gravity will kick in once supports go, and for businesses and for individuals.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly, I think. Stampede for the Great Getaway, 600% surge in summer holiday bookings. And royal family keep fingers crossed for Prince Philip. He's back. He's staying in hospital, rather.
Mm-hmm.
Summer catch-up lessons for pupils. Was that the case last year as well? Or no?
There's a mistake, or that people are encouraged to think, partially because of the rhetoric, that the schools aren't, the pupils aren't at school. They have been. They've been. You've had them physically attending school if their parents are key workers, but teachers have been in there teaching online, giving Zoom lessons and the like. And it's been uneven. Certainly, the public school, by public, the independent fee-paying schools have had whole work programs and. They've been continuing lessons as well. One person who's been conspicuous by his absence, it must be said, throughout this, is the Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, who we touched on this, I think, at the end of last week's conversation, so that rather than actually looking at using the break to get vaccinations to teachers or properly concentrate on a proper timetable that can help them, or he decided to, I think, join with the Housing Secretary to have this war on wokeness, just trying to promote, make universities a free space to discuss unpopular, say, traditional or conservative thought, but under the mask of trying to make them independent. Well, doing the opposite, actually trying to prescribe to universities and to educational establishments what they may teach and what they may not teach. But he hasn't actually been, he's been conspicuous by his absence, as I said, in dealing with the bread and butter issues of schools, especially in the COVID. We're going to see it again when the exams come up. Last year was a huge fiasco using the algorithms to predict grades, and there isn't a great deal of evidence that they've braced themselves for that properly.
Yeah, we have our own issues here. The magazine of ideas for open-minded readers, The Critic. Lockdowns don't work. This is not a magazine you take, is it, Bernard? The Critic?
I've seen some of the articles online. It's not my regular reading list. No, I mean, I might have Wired, New York Times, Statesman, all the usual ones. But I mean, presumably it wants to be provocative. The statistics of the last, I think, when was it, January 4, January 5, we've had a lockdown. The statistics, despite being quite grim, speak for themselves. And the government health advisors say that lockdown has worked, but it's a question of
they would, though, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's a question of what cost, I should say. But I've always argued that it's a false dichotomy to say you've got an economic cost versus public health. You can't have one without the other, to be honest.
Yeah, well, yeah. Powell's cautious return to normal outlook steadies jittery US markets.
The new chairman of the Fed,
Jay Powell.
I used to think that I knew anything about economics and fiscal policy, but the last 10 years and the last crash and the responses to it have convinced me that I, a bit like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, I know nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll be an interesting year. Again, Tiger's Terror, we covered the Star, Piers panic button. And I think that's all of them. Actually, I'll just check if the Irish Daily Mail comes in around this time. No, it's not here. Bernard.
What time do you get the Indo and the Irish Times? About 4 or 5?
Well, we get. I think the Irish Times is available from about 1 a.m. and then the Independent is online at 7 a.m. So it's a bit, higgledy-piggledy, as they come out. All the English papers are there before 11.
Well, usually that, certainly under the late great Vinnie Doyle, he was reluctant, he was torn between letting people, the marketing of seeing the front page, or letting the front page be seen, or not wanting any competitors to steal the story that was there, at least before the City edition.
Yeah, well, they're great for the kind of news exclusives though. They're great for the like getting the edge over the Irish Times on a kind of on a news basis, like
well, the Belgian and Dutch management there seems to be pretty good these days. It seems to be a lot of the more toxic practices seem to have disappeared with certain individuals.
Right. Yeah. But in the background, the bugging trials of,
What you said.
I beg your pardon?
That's what I said. A lot of the more toxic practices appear to have disappeared with certain individuals.
Sorry, yes, I beg your pardon. Yeah, no. But that case, it's sort of
yes.
on and on. Bernard, thanks a lot. Thank you for joining us tonight. And the Irish World is on sale.
In Ireland on Thursday, it's available. The digital edition's online. It's available on Wednesdays. And before we go, as we were talking about, we started by talking about hair, and there's a Matt cartoon in tomorrow's Telegraph, which has two very hirsute individuals scrabbling at their laptops in their kitchen, saying, "Well, if they're going to introduce vaccination passports, then they'll need if they need photographs, they'll have to open the hairdressers." So the very shaggy people. So.
I'm gonna find that. In fact, you sent it to me.
Good night, John. It's always a pleasure.
1 second, I have the cartoon just so we can close on this. Can you see that? Oh, brilliant. Bernard, thank you very much.
Take care, John.